Today in our 2017 Jeep Wrangler, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Roadmaster Brake-Lite relay kit for towed vehicles, part number RM-88400. I'd like to show you why we're going to need that Brake-Lite relay. We have a vehicle with a 7-way on the back hooked up to our Jeep here. We got our lights on and our left turn signal going. Now, but in the case that there's a supplemental braking system in our Jeep when it's being flat towed, and we hit the brakes on our motorhome, which activate the brakes inside our Jeep, our brakes are actually going to override the turn signal and it's going to go solid. The Brake-Lite relay is going to prevent our Jeep's brake signal from overriding the turn signal that comes on from our RV. Now there are two installation applications for the Brake-Lite relay. One for most vehicles with a key and a normally open brake pedal switch, just like on our Jeep here. And in this situation, you're going to use the ignition circuit to activate the Brake-Lite relay, so when we turn our key on, our brake lights are going to work like normal. Now the other application is going to be for a push button start, and it's going to feature a normally closed brake pedal switch. In this case, you will need to use the motorhome taillight circuit to activate the Brake-Lite relay, which means if you do have a push button start, you need to have your taillights on your RV in order for the relay to work so your car doesn't override that signal. So here's what our Brake-Lite relay looks like installed. It's going to be installed underneath our dash, and it's going to be real close to our brake switch. And we are going to have one connection point in our fuse panel that we're going to have to tap into for our power source. Let's go ahead and take our Jeep outside and see if it fixed our problem. So here I got my Jeep hooked up, and I got the lights running to make sure that the turn signal's working. I'm going to go ahead and step on the brake and make sure that it doesn't cancel out the blinking back here. So if I step on the brake pedal in my Jeep, we can see that it's still blinking and it's not going to cancel out my turn signal. Now if I go ahead and unhook it, I'm going to go ahead and show you that the lights are still working properly. Now with the key in the off position or out of the vehicle completely, our brake lights are not going to come on at all when we push on it. But if we turn the key on to the on position and we push on our brake, it's going to activate that relay and our lights are going to work just like normal. Now that we've seen how our Brake-Lite relay works and we know the benefits of it, let's go ahead and show you how we get it installed. To begin our installation, we're going to find our brake switch. Now the easiest way to find it is if you find your brake pedal and you follow it up, there should be an electrical connector mounted right there. Now fortunately, on our Jeep here, we have this panel, and if we pull out and down on this panel, it'll pop out, and we can set it aside for right now. Now underneath that panel, we're going to have this metal panel held on by 2 bolts. I'm going to be using a 10mm socket, and we can pull it out. And the easiest way to get this out is if you lift up, it'll release those 2 tabs, and we can pull it right out. So our brake switch is going to be right here, and we're going to need to pull back some of the electrical tape on the wires here so we can gain access to them. Also, if you want to grab a flathead screwdriver, we can pop that clip out right there. You just want to get underneath that clip and pry it out. It'll give us a little bit more room to work with underneath the dash here. I'm going to go ahead and cut back some of this electrical tape so I can gain access to the wires as well. Now when you're cutting back this tape, I'm using a knife. You just want to be extra careful not to cut the wires when you're pulling this tape back. Now I have my voltmeter here, and we're going to have to test each one of the wires coming off the brake switch, and we're going to look for a 12-volt power source when the brake pedal is applied. That's going to be the cold side of the brake switch. Now a lot of you may be wondering why I'm using a voltmeter instead of a test light. Well, per the instructions, we don't want to rely on just a test light because there are several other wires that may be energized and they may be under 12 volts. So we're looking for that 12-volt power when the pedal is depressed only. So I'm going to go ahead and test the wires and I'll let you know which one it is. So here I have my tester on my white wire with the brown stripe. And if you watch the tester when I push the brake pedal, we're getting 12.4 volts. So we know that the white wire with the brown stripe is going to be the cold side of our brake switch, and we're going to cut it directly in half. Now we're going to come back and strip back both ends of the wire. We're going to take one of our blue butt connectors in our kit, and we're going to slide it over the wire that's closest to the brake switch. We can go ahead and crimp it down. Now we can go ahead and grab our relay harness, and each one of the ends of the wires is pre-stripped, just has a little bit of insulation left on there. Now we're going to start with our green wire. I'm actually going to cut back a little bit of this wire because there's a lot that they strip back. And now we're going to take the end of this green wire and we're going to insert it and crimp it down into the butt connector we just installed. Now we can grab another butt connector and we're going to be putting this on the other end of the wire that we cut from our brake switch. And once we have it in place, we can crimp it down. Now we're going to be working with the black wire that's on our relay harness. And we're going to be putting it into that butt connector we just installed. Now we should have 3 wires left, a red, white, and blue. Now, the blue wire, we're not going to be using in this application, so I'm going to come very close to the relay and I'm going to snip it off. Now we can focus on our white wire. Our white wire is going to be for our ground. So we go ahead and strip back the insulation, cut off the excess wire, and actually we have a factory ground, 2 of them, right here on the driver's side, right next to the body right here on the side. We're going to need to remove those nuts to get our ground in place. Now our kit does provide us with a ring terminal and a self-tapping screw to get your ground in place, but I'm going to be replacing this ring terminal and not using the self-tapping screw. I'm going to be replacing it with this larger ring terminal, and you can pick them up on our website. We do have a wide variety of sizes to match the needs you have. And we're going to be using the ground point right here. And in this case, since this is a rather large ring terminal, I'm going to strip back a little bit more of the wire and I'm going to double it up. That way it has something to grab onto. We're going to take our wire, we're going to fold it in half, insert it into our ring terminal, and we can crimp it down. I'm going to be using a 10mm socket to remove that nut. With the nut removed, we can slide our ground into place and reattach the nut. Now with all of our connections made under the dash, we can go ahead and get ready to plug our relay in. Now this does only plug in one way, so you don't have to worry about putting it in incorrectly or it not lining up, because it does only go in one way. So we can go ahead and plug our relay in. Our red wire is going to have to go to a power source that only gets power when the ignition is on. Now, unfortunately, our fuse box is under the hood, so we are going to have to extend the wire out because the one they give us is nowhere near long enough to reach our fuse panel. So I had some extra green wire laying around that is the same gauge as the gauge wire on my relay harness. Now, if you need some wire, you can pick some up on our website, and you can get it by the foot using part number 16-1-1. So we're going to go ahead and strip back the end of our extra wire. We're going to take one of our blue butt connectors, put it on one end, and crimp it into place. Then we can pull back the insulation on our red wire, and we can put it into our butt connector. And then we can crimp it down. As I mentioned, we are going to have to get into the engine compartment, and if we look right underneath the hood here in the cowl, we're going to have a grommet that already has some lines going through it. And I'm going to be taking an airline tube. I'm going to push it through, and it should pop out underneath our dash, and we can meet up with our wires. It's going to be right below this grommet with the hose coming out. It's going to be right next to the brake booster. It's kind of hard to see with my hand in there, but it's right down there. So my airline did come out underneath my dash. Now we can go ahead and grab the end of the wire that we extended, and I'm actually going to feed it into my airline tube a little bit, and then take a little bit of electrical tape and secure it. I don't have to worry about it falling out when I start pulling my airline tube back. Now we can move back to the engine bay and pull the airline tube through. And you're going to want to pull all the excess out. Make sure you got enough room inside. And it never hurts to double check to see what's going on the inside of the vehicle where the excess could be hanging up. Now we're going to need to move our wire from the driver's side over here and go all into the passenger side where our fuse box is. Everybody's going to do it a little bit different, so I'm going to go ahead and run mine over there, and then I'll show you how I did it. So I ran my wire behind this wire loom here against the firewall, zip tying it along the way. And it came down, went underneath this cover right here, and I have my wire coming out right by my fuse panel. Now we're going to need to open up our fuse panel, and we're going to need to test for a circuit that only has power when the key is on. Fuse panel open, if we lift up, we'll be able to take the cover off, and we can start checking our fuses. So I got my tester again, and I'm going to start checking my fuses to make sure that there is no power going to the fuse when the key is off. So right now, just checking a couple, this 10 amp fuse and this 20 amp fuse are not getting any power. But the 20 amp next to that and the 25 on the other side of the 10 are both getting power. So we can't use either of these, but for now, we can check this 10 amp and 20 amp fuse. So I'm gonna hop in the car and turn the ignition on and retest, and I should have a 12 volt power source. So if we check this 10 amp fuse, I'm getting 12.3 volts on my voltmeter with the key on, but I wasn't getting any power with the key off. So this would be the fuse we're gonna wanna use. Now if you're wondering what location this is gonna be location M33 in your fuse panel. So we can go ahead and pull that 10 amp fuse out. I'm just using a pair of needle nose pliers. Now the fuse that we pulled out, we're gonna wanna put it into our fuse tab closest to the fuse blades or on the bottom. Maybe a little bit of a tight fit, but it will go. I'm just gonna push it in. And now we're gonna take the fuse that comes in our kit and put it in the top. We can go ahead and put our fuse tab back in place where we got the fuse out. And now we're gonna need to take our green wire and attach it to the butt connector that's pre-installed in the fuse tab. So I'm gonna go ahead and estimate about how much I'm gonna need and cut my wire. And with the wire stripped back, we can go ahead and insert it into our butt connector and crimp it down. Now, so that we don't have to worry about our lid crushing our wire, I'm gonna cut a small relief cut right here so that my wire can fit down in there. I'm just gonna be using a pair of cutters here. Now we can grab the lid and make sure the lid will go on too. Now you're gonna wanna secure your relay and wires up underneath the dash, out of the way, so they're not gonna interfere with the pedals. Just gonna take a zip tie and went through the top of my relay. I'm gonna secure it to this panel right here. Reinstall the panel, put the bolts back in. And then finally, put the plastic cover back in place. And that'll finish up our look at the Roadmaster Brake-Lite relay kit for towed vehicles, part number RM-88400 on our 2017 Jeep Wrangler.